All right, so hi everyone. I am Christine Stone with the Customer Connect team at BMC. I'm excited to introduce you all to John Leach, Senior Network Administrator at CBC Federal Credit Union, along with Darin Bartik, Vice President of Solutions Management for the Performance and Analytics Business Unit at BMC. Artificial intelligence, also known as AI, is such a key topic in the industry today. And John, I know you are quite passionate about this topic, and we are thrilled to hear your insights around AI. So I'll turn it over to Darin to get us started. Darin?
Great. Thanks, Christine. So, John, thanks again for joining us today. We're just going to spend maybe 15, maybe 20 minutes or so talking about this and share some of your insights with the audience. So why don't we just jump right in? Why don't we start with just a real quick introduction. Tell us a little bit about the credit union and what your role is there.
Well, I'm the Senior Network Administrator for CBC. We're a little credit union located in Southern California. A little over $750 million in assets. So we're right there in the midsection for credit unions.
Okay.
But
great.
and I'm just happen to be the senior tech on site.
All right, great. So you've been around the industry for quite a while, and you've seen quite a few big trends come and buzzwords and things. Artificial intelligence, definitely not a new technology, but it's obviously been getting an awful lot of attention in the industry. So why don't we just start with the basic question. When you see AI being talked about and when you think about it from your perspective, what are just some of the initial things that come to mind when what does it mean to you?
Well, for us, the determination, the actual definition can change as the way you talk about it. Some people consider AI, they're self-aware, or artificial intelligence. It's just a machine that's programmed to spit out generic answers. But you're getting this piece with autonomous cars, and content delivery networks, and the human speech element to it that brings it more to what you would call artificial intelligence. It can think on its own. It's just really responding to answers, but to the general public, it could seem that this device is actually pretty smart and talking to me.
Yeah.
And it's your phone, Alexa, Siri. You ask it a question, it answers.
So why do you think, I think you're right, that it does depend on what your perspective is. So let's kind of narrow down the perspective a little bit. And, you're in network engineering. You obviously think about the network, which obviously is critical to any organization. But why do you think artificial intelligence has become such a hot trend lately? What are you seeing from a technical and a business perspective that's made this be such a big topic?
Well, for us, you're getting analytics that can be done on your network in an instant that what you would consider artificial intelligence, looking at it, projecting what's happening, what's going to happen. It takes all that into, it can process it a lot faster than we humans can. So you look at it, it gives you an instant update. Here's what's happening in your network. We're projecting this. We've picked up this trend that happens, every Thursday at 3, and it becomes, we rely on it to tell us what's going to happen before it actually happens.
Yeah, good. You mentioned the word trend, and I think about patterns a lot when we talk about this. Trends and patterns have gotten a lot more complicated to understand, right, and to interpret and to even map out. What have been some of the things that have happened in the network space that have made that so much more complex lately?
Well, I guess an easy example to show the complexity or how simple. I mean, everyone is familiar with the program Wireshark. And as a network administrator, we used to rely on Wireshark a lot. We'd, turn it on, look at it, and you could see, your packets going through, what's going on, one piece at a time. You hook that to a network now, and you have to stop the capture after just a few minutes because there's so much going on your network that you can't watch it live. So you have to capture a piece and then go back through and start looking at it. Where AI comes into, it can capture all that live and change the information and start spitting out what you're actually looking for.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's literally, I think as you said before, it's able to compute information much faster than your team could, no matter how big your team is, frankly, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So this isn't just a substitute for a couple new people coming online. It completely changes the paradigm around which you can manage. Yeah.
Correct.
So let's talk about the business, because obviously, I mean, network engineering, network monitoring, this has been around for, well, ever since the network, right? So the business, and when it comes to funding initiatives around applying AI to the network, where does the money come from? Oftentimes it's coming from the business stakeholders now, and even the lines of business. How are you talking about this, or how would you suggest talking about this with your business partners, your internal customers? How is this going to serve them better?
You're going to see it in our industry. I mean, we're banking industry. You're going to see AI become more and more prevalent every time you walk into a branch. You'll see less and less people, and we're in the process of looking at it. I've seen other institutions that have already implemented where you go up and you're at a teller station, but it's run by AI. It is what we would consider a super hybrid ATM, but it has a video screen on it of a person that you'll actually be communicating with, but it is an AI person.
Yeah,
it's
interesting.
your equivalent to an ATM tied to Alexa and Siri, who will process your transaction for you. If you need a money order, it will generate a money order for you. You can ask it questions, and it can generate the answers for you. Basically, it is a virtual teller machine.
Yep.
And
literally a virtual agent.
Yes, correct. And so, it cuts down on staffing and, all that goes into that. But what it kind of does is it moves more of a trend to the back offices, so you do need more, your IT section will grow larger because you're maintaining more electronic equipment.
Yeah, so your IT footprint's growing. It's also getting more complex. So then how are you thinking about, there's the front end, maybe the customer-facing version of AI, like you were talking about, virtual agents and AI-assisted natural language processing, et cetera. But how do you then apply that thinking to your daily world as a network engineer as far as running the systems that would never touch a user?
Yeah, for us, it definitely makes our our network more complex. We have to rely on AI to show us what's going on, and unless you just want to try to blow up your staff, to something that wouldn't be realistic.
Yeah.
But to manage it with something, a team, they have to incorporate the AI into them. They have to look at their benefits, what it'll do for us. Also, where you're going to be located at. All that changes with the dynamics of what we can do. Cloud's the other buzz, tied into AI. What can be done on the back end side?
Yeah. Talk to me more, John, about the cloud aspect. So as you and other financial institutions and even other industry companies, as they adopt the public cloud and even just more private cloud technology, how does that create complexity that drives the need for the use of AI on the operation side of things?
Well, a lot of it is, you're pulling stuff away from your on-site team and moving it to a cloud base where you're relying on someone else, that you may not have met. You don't know these people, you don't see them, you'll talk to them on the phone or something every once in a while, but so you're relying on them also, and your tie-in pieces to make sure all that works. Your ISPs come more into play then. So you're bringing more parties to it to try to make something a little more diversified. So we want cloud-based, backup systems. We want cloud-based failover systems that we can have at any time, and we can bring it up from anywhere. But when you start doing that, it makes it, you gain versatility, but you start pulling away because you're adding more complexity to the same piece.
Yeah, so it goes back to really the complexity makes it even harder to understand the patterns of interactions. So if something starts to slow down, or there's a packet loss, or something's happening that's interrupting that virtual agent at an ATM that we were talking about, how do you figure out where the problem really sits? That becomes even harder in a cloud-based environment, right?
Instead of having what we would call one-stop shopping, you're pulling more pieces into the puzzle that you'd have to go through, and you hope for that thing that does not happen is where he blames her and her blames him, and everybody starts blaming each other, and you can't figure it out.
Yeah. What about just the idea of rules and what I would often refer to as a deterministic approach? So the if-then statements that we've used for so long in management, where we know how certain things interact. But doesn't that get a lot harder? How do you see yourself dealing with that moving forward, and how do you use AI for that?
It gets extremely harder, as people look at Office 365 for another piece, where you start running hybrid systems. We like the idea of Office 365 for licensing pieces and purposes like that, because it keeps it all out of your, all you do is you assign a person to it. If that one's not there anymore, you remove that person out of it. But when you start going into a cloud-based, Word and Office, then you pick up that complexity of, okay, who's going to be in charge of this? What happens when this happens? Where do we go from here? Who is the point of contact for this? What you would normally have in-house is if, okay, my email, I didn't receive the email, it got lost. What happened to it? It would be you troubleshoot it yourself.
Right.
It's the server. Here it is, where I'm not relying on anyone else. It also comes, especially for businesses that are 24/7, your medical fields, things like that have to be up. The banking industry, people think of it as 9 to 5. It's no longer that way.
No.
Banking is now 24/7. People,
right.
You're going to check it online. You're going to use ATMs. It is 24/7 all the time now.
Yeah,
I want
exactly.
to check my account at 10 o'clock at night. I want to
That's
do a
right.
transaction at 10 o'clock
That's
at
right.
night. You can
the systems have to perform no matter what time of day it is, or no matter what type of region or device they're interacting from. So it just makes the permutations of the complexity even greater, right?
Correct.
So it's interesting because your credit union, as you said, you're kind of in that middle sweet spot. So you're not the largest, most sophisticated organization in the world, but you're still thinking about AI. What would you tell to other organizations of a similar size? How should they be thinking about it? Is it a maturity thing? They have to be at a certain point in their maturity cycle as an IT shop, or should they be thinking about this earlier than maybe some other technologies?
On this one, the first thing is you have to look at your demographics, number one.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a credit union based out of San Jose, California, AI would be received, very well. Credit
mm-hmm.
unions that are more in a rural area, you look at your demographics as like, okay, we've got farmers or cattle ranchers or, people who, technology to them is just, I don't like it, don't need it, don't want it.
Right.
But if you are in that demographic and you look at it, it's like, okay, how can we simplify? How can we make the process very user-friendly, not put people off because they're talking to a machine?
Yep.
And if all those things can fit to you, you'll look at your, return on investment, ROI. Can we expand? Keep the same amount of employees we got, but we expand out and grow larger, and we don't need to add more staff to accomplish that.
Now, what about on the more operations side of things for people like yourself and other IT professionals that may be listening to this, where again they're using AI to help operate IT and things that aren't actually visible to the end users. Again, same line of thinking. Does it require you to be at a certain maturity level, or would you suggest to other users like yourself that they should be evaluating AI no matter where they are in the maturity cycle?
you should always evaluate and look at it to see if this can be applied to you. What you have to do is look at, usage rates versus, cost. I don't want to pay for something that I'm just going to sit here and not use. Are you going to use 20% of it, 50% of it, 100% of it? Where that sweet spot is for you. And most companies, that are involved in AI, such as BMC, you have multi-layered products. You have small, medium, large. It's AI complexity is the same exact way. What pieces can we use, and where do we want to go? Do we start here and then ramp up to where we want to get to later on?
Yeah, good.
Cost is definitely a moving, moves the needle one way or the other.
Yep. So another question on when we think about cost and we think about people and maturity, a lot of even some of the big industry thought leaders are even cautioning the industry on how to think about AI and how it can be even dangerous, or some people are worried that AI is going to replace their job. What would your thoughts be on that? What would you say to the audience in terms of AI replacing their job?
Well, I can see in where we're at, it's not replacing the job literally for us here. I mean, I can see where that would play in. But if you're using it as expandability, like we can open up extra branches, use a smaller footprint, and move people about to where, we now have this, these two people will be at this branch now with virtual machines, and two people can run an entire branch. So you get to diversify and move your assets out instead of having them all concentrated in one spot. You actually make yourself, it's like, I call it the Starbucks syndrome. That now there's one on every corner.
Yep.
Because it makes it easy. Instead of just having an ATM machine, especially when you start looking into, the problems with ATMs being, people putting skimmers on them, and, stealing personal information off of them, where you get away from that with AI because it's actually in an institution, it's in a building, it's got people around it. But you get that convenience of an ATM, but right. You get the full service of a teller.
Yeah. And as a network engineer, in terms of it replacing your job, do you see AI replacing you, or does it see you just changing your job, right? Maybe letting you do things that you haven't been able to do before.
Yeah, it'll change it. It'll actually grow, I think, the tech side of it, your IT departments will get larger because you're maintaining more, and it'll be more diversified, and you'll start getting areas of specialty a lot, even more than we have now. When I started in this business, we were actually called electronic technicians. There was no such thing as a IT department or a computer tech. We were electronic technicians that worked on mainframes. We repaired the boards, the power supplies, all that good stuff. But and it's just evolved from there. And now you have specialty areas, where the guys are just Cisco or just Microsoft or just Active Directory or just monitoring. BMC is a target on it too, where you have just someone who runs your BMC products. It gets very specialized now compared to what it used to be. And it'll just continue on down the road where you'll get an AI specialist. We handle this type of machine, so I handle just the network side of it.
Yeah. So, okay, so one last question, I guess. As you think about just kind of summarizing your thoughts for the audience, what would you recommend people think about, kind of the top two things that people think about more from, again, people like you that are running the IT systems? How should they be thinking about AI, especially as it comes to kind of reinventing how IT operations and that role and how it can add more business value? What would be your top two things?
Well, the first thing is simplification. How can AI help us simplify what we see every day? Yeah, in the troubleshooting, what comes up, all of it is how can we simplify this? And then the second piece on that is, okay, if we can simplify, how can we use the assets that we have then to broaden the next piece? Because you always want to expand and look to see what you can do better. Once you make it simplified, you can run it easier. Then you get to look at what's long term, and you get your engineers doing what they really like to do is project design. What can we do next? What's the next step to go to? But definitely AI is that piece to look at it for simplification.
Okay.
How can you
Great.
organize it all into a nice little package?
Good. Okay. So it doesn't have to be a big scary technology, and from everything you said, this is not just a trend, and this isn't just a new buzzword. This is going to be adding real value to organizations moving forward.
Yeah. Just we look at it, it's intelligent agents. That's what it is.
Yep. Okay. Good.
Instead of having that dumb agent that we stick out there and stick on a server, now we're going to have intelligent agents that we put out there that are going to be talking back to us, telling us what's going on.
Yeah, good. That's a good way of thinking about it. Not only from the virtual agent standpoint in banking, but also just the actual technical agent itself. So, good. Okay, great. Well, John, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts, and good luck with everything at CBC Credit Union. And we will be talking to you again soon. So, thanks to everyone for tuning into this podcast as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone, and hope you'll join us next time.